Today, we're talking about a living paradox, a bird that's technically a shorebird but doesn't really live by the shore, a creature that's a master of camouflage but is somehow thriving in our busiest cities. And its eerie call? Well, that just haunts the Australian night. We are talking about the incredible bush stone-curlew.
And that brings us to the central puzzle of this whole explainer. I mean, think about it. The curlew is doing great in places like Brisbane, but then you go just a few miles away into New South Wales, and its numbers are absolutely plummeting. How is that even possible? Well, to figure that out, we first need to get to know this bird a little better.
So, let's get a proper introduction to this fascinating creature. People often call it the Houdini of the bird world. And believe me, there's a very, very good reason for that.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? The bush stone-curlew stands about 55 centimeters tall on these incredibly long, kind of skinny legs. And like I said, while it's technically a type of shorebird, it doesn't migrate like its cousins. It pretty much stays put. And this is key. It's nocturnal. It really comes to life right as the sun is going down. Now, it's pretty easy to mix up the bush stone-curlew with its close relative, the beach stone-curlew, but the differences are super clear once you know what to look for. The bush stone-curlew, on the left, has a smaller bill and its facial markings are way more subtle. It's just a more understated character than its beach-loving cousin. And this is how it earns that Houdini nickname. I mean, look at it. Its gray and brown feathers are the perfect camouflage for the Australian woodlands. It can stand completely still among fallen leaves and branches and just, poof, disappear.
This camouflage is its #1 defense. So, if a predator gets close, especially when it's nesting right there on the ground, the curlew doesn't panic and fly away. Nope, it just freezes. It lowers its head, flattens its body over its eggs, and totally trusts its feathers to make it look like just another part of the forest floor.
But if that whole vanishing act doesn't work, it has a plan B, and let me tell you, it is dramatic. It will suddenly jump up, spread its wings to their full 1-meter wingspan, and let out this loud, intimidating hiss. It's a shocking transformation, and it's designed to make any threat think twice and just back off. And then there's its voice. If you've ever been out in the Australian bush at night and you hear what sounds like a ghostly, high-pitched wail, chances are you've heard a curlew. It's a sound that's been called creepy and eerie, and trust me, once you hear it, you never forget it.
All these amazing traits bring us right back to our core mystery. It's this conservation paradox. How can one single species have two completely different stories, just depending on where you happen to find it? This really illustrates the problem perfectly. On a global scale, the big international conservation group, the IUCN, lists the curlew as a species of least concern. And that makes sense, right? You can see them in city parks in Brisbane, but then you just head down the coast to New South Wales, and bam, it's officially listed as endangered. So, what on earth is going on?
To solve this, we need to do some detective work. We need to unmask the threats. In the places where the curlew is really struggling, why is this master of disguise suddenly so incredibly vulnerable?
The first major threat is a story that's all too familiar in Australia. Predators that were introduced and just don't belong in the ecosystem. See, the really crucial thing here is that the curlew's main defenses, freezing, camouflage, they evolved over thousands of years to fool native predators. They just don't work against the sharp noses of European red foxes or the hunting instincts of feral and domestic cats. These new predators are just devastating, taking out everything from the eggs and chicks right up to the adult birds.
And the second part of this 1-2 punch is the loss of the very places this bird needs to hide in the first place. A curlew's camouflage is totally useless without the right background. You know, clearing woodlands for farms and cities, that's the obvious part. But it's also the little things, the tidying up of parks and backyards, removing the exact leaf litter, fallen branches, and grassy cover that the curlew needs to nest, to find insects, and most importantly, to hide.
And as researcher Julie M. Old points out, the stakes here are incredibly high. For a species with falling numbers, every single nest, every single egg matters. A fox stealing just one egg can be a massive blow to a local population that's already just hanging on.
But it's not all bad news. Not at all. Scientists are now fighting back with data, and they're trying to crack the curlew's habitat code to figure out exactly where to focus their efforts to save them. This is just some brilliant digital detective work. First, researchers gathered hundreds of sightings, some old, some new, from both experts and just regular citizen scientists. Then, they actually went to 60 of those locations and did the forensic work, measuring everything from the type of trees to how deep the leaf litter was. Finally, they plugged all that data into mapping software to build a predictive model.
And here's some of what they found. The model showed some very specific preferences. Around Gosford, the curlews loved wet sclerophyll forests. That's basically forests with tough, leathery-leaved trees, especially with a type of she oak. But further north, in Port Stephens, they preferred dry forests with Sydney red gums. It just goes to show they aren't just looking for any woodland, they are looking for the right woodland.
So, the practical result of all this work is basically a treasure map. It shows land managers these high-probability hotspots, the exact areas that need to be protected or restored to give the curlews the absolute best chance of survival. It turns a big, vague problem into a targeted, focused mission. And that brings us to the final, and I think the most important part. How do we take all this amazing scientific data and turn it into real-world action that actually helps?
Well, the solutions are remarkably straightforward. It really comes down to controlling feral predators like foxes. And for those of us with pets, it's about being responsible, keeping cats inside and dogs on a leash in known curlew areas. It also means we have to resist that urge to clean up nature, leave the messy leaf litter, leave those fallen branches. And finally, if you're lucky enough to actually see one, just give it some space.
So we end right where we started, with a paradox. For a bird that's a genius at becoming invisible, its problems are hiding in plain sight. This master of disguise is, quite simply, running out of places to hide. The real question now is, having unmasked the threats, can we finally see the solutions that are right there in front of us?